All right, so today we're going to do factoring trinomials, which is the opposite of expanding. So what I'm going to show you first is I'm going to show you how to expand this, and so that we can have an idea of how to factor it. All right, so let's expand this and see what it looks like. So here we go. X times x gives me x squared. And then x times 5 gives me positive 5x. And then I have to multiply 3 into everything. So 3 with x, so 3 times x is plus 3x. And then 3 times 5 is what? Plus 15. Okay, so we know how to do that. And now we just simplify it here. So x squared plus 5 plus 3 is 8. So 8x plus 15. Okay. Is everyone okay? So we know how to do that, yes? 5.6. So today we're doing 5.6. All right, so let's try this one. X times x is what? X squared. X times negative 3 is what? Negative 3x. And then what do we do next? Negative 4 times x, you get negative 4x. And negative 3 times negative 4, negative 3 times negative 4 gives us positive 12. And that we can simplify to x squared. Negative 3x minus 4x gives us negatives 7x plus 12. Did you get that answer? Yeah. All right, good. All right, let's do the last one here. So x times x is x squared. X times 6, negative 6 is negative 6x. 2 times x is positive 2x. And 2 times negative 6 is negative 12. All right, let's simplify that. That gives me x squared minus negative 6x plus 2x gives us negative 4x. And then minus 12. Now, what we're trying to do today is actually go backwards. Okay. So we're trying to go backwards here. We're trying to go from this expanded form here, also called what? Standard form, into what? Trying to go back to the factored form. So, what do you think? How can we go from expanded form back to factored form? Look at the expanded form. What do you have? X squared, yes? We have x squared. Where did that x squared come from? Where did x squared come from? X times x. So, if we want to make this x squared plus 8x plus 15 into two brackets, right? That means that the two brackets must have what? X times x. Does that make sense? So if I were to go back with this one into two brackets, no. Right. Okay, so again, how do we get the x squared? Is by having x and x right at the front. Because x times x is going to give us x squared. All right, think about this one now. Where did this 15 come from? Where did that 15 come from?
It came from 3
Right, so by multiplying the two last numbers, right, 3 and 5, I'm actually going to get what? 15. You got it? So right here, by multiplying 3 and 5, okay, I can get 15. Plus 3 and plus 5. Is everyone okay so far? Yes? Okay. Let's try the next one here. Let's try the next one. So again, I'm trying to make two brackets. Okay. And if I want to make two brackets, I need to have what times what? Again, what's right at the front? You have a x squared. Okay, so where did that x squared come from? By multiplying the two x's here. So that means if I'm going back to my two brackets, I do need x times what? X. Yes? Now, where did the 12 come from? The 4 and the 3, right? So 4 times 3 is 12. Do you know what times what gives me 12 as well? 6 times 2, right? So 6 times 2 gives me 12 as well. So what is the right answer? Is it 6 times 2? Or is it 3 times 4? Okay, so how do we know? How do we choose that? Let's take a look at where 3 and 4 are involved again. Okay? Did you hear what I said? So 3 times 4, yes, is 12. 2 times 6 is also 12. Okay. But let's take a look if the 3 and the 4 are involved in this result of standard form as well. Do you see it? Where is the 3 and the 4 involved again? You see that? Negative 3 and negative 4 are right there. Okay. And what do those two numbers become? Those two numbers become what? Negative 7. You understand? So these two numbers, the negative 4 and negative 3, become what? Negative 7 when you put them together. Does that make sense? So that's why it has to be negative 3 and negative 4. Because if I put 2 and 6, right? If I put 2 and 6, I cannot get negative 7. Does that make sense? Yes? Okay. All right, let's try the last one here again. All right, so let's try the last one here. So this time is going to be what? X times what? X times X in the bracket. That's what we're going to start to get what? Why do we put X times X? Why do we put X and X here? To get what? X squared. Okay. Now again, how do we get 12? 2 times? 2 times what? 2 times 6, right? 2 times 6. That's how you get 12. However, again, it could have been what? 3 and 4 make 12 too, right? But why do we choose 6 and 12? Well, because I'm trying to make what? I'm trying to make negative 4 here. Do you understand that? So I'm trying to make negative 4, and the only way I can make negative 4 is by using 2 and 6. However, this has to be what? Positive, and this has to be negative in order to make negative 4. Does that make sense? Okay. So, how do we factor? Okay, so we're going to have something like that. Let me just write it in general. So, ax squared plus bx plus c. Okay, so let's say we have something like that. Okay, so all the ones that we're going to do today have the a value as 1. Okay, so I'm just going to, we don't really need to write the a because the a is going to be 1. So I'm just going to erase it here. Okay. So a is 1. But let's take a look. So in order to get my brackets back into my brackets, what do I need to put here? what do I need to put? X and what? X and X, right? Okay, and then I need two numbers. I'll call them capital A and capital B. What's special about these two numbers? Can you tell me what's special about these two numbers?
Which one?
Capital A and capital B. They need to multiply to what? C. So what you need to do is find two numbers. Okay. Two numbers. A and B that what? That multiply to what? Multiply to what? C. You understand? But at the same time, A and B have to also what? Add up to what? Add up to B. You understand that? So that multiply to C and add to what? To B. Does that make sense? So I need A times B to equal to C, and also that A plus B needs to equal to little b. Does that make sense? Yes? All right. So let's try. I'm going to skip this chart here. I'll come back to this chart after we do a couple of practice questions. And then we can think about this, okay? But let's try some questions here. Let's try to factor these. So, if I want to factor this, again, I need to do what? Draw two brackets. Okay, so there are my two brackets. What do I have to put right at the front? Yeah, that's right. Y and what? Y over here. Because remember, y times y is going to give you what? Y squared. Now, I need to find two numbers that multiply to what? 30. But those two numbers also somehow have to add up to what? Have to add up to 11. All right, so what I'm going to do, the best thing for you to do is list all the pairs that multiply to 30. Okay, so I'm just going to go in order. So let's do this in order. So 1, start with 1 and 30. That's always, the easy one to find, 1 and 30. We do notice that we can divide 30 by what? Also, we can divide 30 by what? By 15. So let's go next one, 2, right? So you do 30 divided by 2, you get what? You get 15. So that means 2 times 15 equals also to 30. You understand? So this is kind of like finding my capital A and capital B numbers. All right. So what else? Does 3 work? Can I divide 30 by 3? Yes. So I can divide 30 by 3 and I would get what? 10. Okay. Can I divide 30 by 4? No. Can I divide 30 by 5? Yes? Yes. So I can divide 30 by 5 to get what? 6. Okay, now you have to choose the right pair here, the right AB value that actually adds up to what? Adds up to 11. Okay, so which pair here would add up to 11? 5 and 6. Okay, do you understand that? There's no other pair that can add up to 11. There's only that one pair, which is 5 and 6. Now, in order to get, remember, I need to get what? Positive 30. Do you see that? I need to get positive 30. And I have to get what? Positive 11. So in order to get positive 30 and positive 11, that means the 6 and the 5 both have to be what? They both have to be positive. You understand? So that means that we have positive 5 and positive 6 here. Does that make sense? Yes? So 5 times 6 gives me what? Positive 30, which is right. And 5 plus 6 gives me what? Positive 11. And that is what I want. All right, does everyone understand that? Okay, let's try B then. All right, I'm just simply going to do what again? Just draw my brackets. So I'm just going to draw my brackets here. And my brackets should start with what and what? B, right? It has to be B and B in order to get B squared. Is everyone okay? All right, now make a what? I'm going to make a list of capital A and capital B values. So what pairs can multiply to 5? Start with 1. 1 and 5. Okay, 1 and something always, right? Yeah. 2? No. 3? No. That's it. That's all. Right? So it must be 1 and 5. So let's see if this works. So 1 and 5, that's the only pair that I have. Now, how do I get negative 6 though? What would it be to get negative 6? Both will have to be what? Both have to be negative, right? Because negative 1 plus negative 5 gives you what? Negative 6. So let's see if it checks out. Negative 1 plus negative 5 gives you negative 6, and that checks out. And you have to also check that negative 1 times what? Negative 5 gives you what? Positive 5, right? And that checks out too. Is that okay? So then that means that we are supposed to put what? Negative 1 here and negative 5 here. All right, let's continue. Now, understand though that sometimes you cannot factor. Okay? So I'm not sure if I have any questions here that cannot factor, but we'll see. All right, here we go. We have to make what? How do we start? Make 2 brackets. What am I going to put in the front?
X.
Yep, X and X. Okay. Now, again, I'm going to make a list of pairs that multiply to what?
18.
Has to multiply to 18. The last number here. So you got 1 and what? 1 and 18. Does 2 work? Yes. 2 and what? 9. Does 3 work? Oh, yes, it does. I was thinking no, but yes, it does. 3 and what? 3 and 6. And does 4 work? No. Does 5 work? No. Does 6 work? Well, yeah, 6 and 3. But I don't need to write them again, right? Okay. So we stop there. All right, now, which pair? Okay, now I have to choose the pair. Which pair are you going to choose? 3 and 6. Why? 3 and 6 have to make what? Negative 3. Okay, so how does it become negative 3 though? What are the signs then? Positive 3 and negative 6. Very good. Okay, so that means this has to be positive 3 and negative 6. Now let's check. I'm just going to double check that that works, okay? So 3 times negative 6 gives me what? negative 18, and that's what I wanted. I wanted a negative 18, okay? And then what do we got here? 3 plus negative 6 gives me what? Negative 3, and that checks out too. Does that make sense? So you do have to find what? Two numbers that multiply to the last number, right? But also has to add up to the middle. And then you have to think about the signs, right? Is it going to be positive or is it going to be negative? So that's what the chart was for. I'll go back to it once we do this last question here. Actually, you know what? Let's go back to the chart now. Okay. So, if C is positive and B is positive, right? So if C is positive and B is positive, then what do the A and B have to be? Did you see from the last question? If A is positive, yeah? If A is positive, yeah, positive 3, right? Positive 5. Sorry. If C is positive, positive 15, and the middle is what? Positive 8. So positive 15 and positive 8, like that. Then A and B had to be what? Both positive. Okay, and that's always going to be the case. So if C is positive, the last number is positive, and the middle number is positive, that means that both the numbers you're looking for have to be positive, right? Both here, both have to be positive. All right. Now, what if C was positive and B is negative? Then what happens? Well, do we have a case like that? Do we do a question like that? Oh yeah, here. You see question B here? C is what? Positive 12. But the middle one here, we have what? Negative 7. So in that case, the capital A and capital B, the two numbers we're looking for, both have to be what? Negative. Okay, so in this case, both numbers have to be negative. Do you understand? Remember, to get C, have to be what? A times B. Well, how do you get a positive C value? There's only one way, or two ways, sorry. Both have to be what? Positive, or both have to be negative. All right, now this is the case when C is negative. So the last number is negative. So in order to get a negative number when you're doing multiplication, one has to be what? Positive, one has to be negative, right? So one has to be positive, one has to be negative. But let's think about this case. What if the middle number is what? Middle number is positive. Then what happens? The bigger number has to be what? Positive, and the smaller has to be negative. Do you understand that? So in this case, the big number is what? It has to be positive, and the small number has to be negative. Is that okay? Because remember, when you add, if you have more positives, right, than negatives, then you're going to end up with what? A positive number, right? Okay. Even though one's positive, one's negative, right? If the bigger number is positive, then the result is positive. What if both C and B are negative? So what if the last number is negative and the middle is also negative? Then what do the signs of A and B have to be? Again, to get a product, a multiplication, A times B to get negative, one has to be what? Positive, one has to be negative. However, if I want the addition to become a negative, then that means the big number now what? Big number has to be what? Negative now. And the small number has to be positive. Okay. Now, you don't have to memorize the chart, right? But try to make sense of the chart. Does that, you understand what I mean by that? Try to make sense, right? Why they're both positive or why they have to be both negative. Don't just try to memorize this. Try to make sense to you. All right, let's continue our different questions. Let's try D here. Let's try D. All right, so again, we want to make what? Make two brackets. So we're going to make two brackets. And so the two brackets have to be what? What and what? X and X, right? Yeah, X and X. We have to find two numbers that what? Two numbers that what? Multiply to 12. So it's going to be what? 1 and 12. Go in order. 1, 12. 2 what? 2, 6. Does 3 work? Yes. 3, 4. Does 4 work? Yeah, but 4 we already used 4, yeah? So we don't need to go any further. We can stop there. All right, which pair, okay, would add up to what? -7. Which pair looks like you can add to -7?
4 and 3.
Yeah, 4 and 3, right? Now, both have to be what? Look, the last number is what? Positive. So 4 times 3 has to give me a positive number, right? But the middle number is negative. So that means that both have to be what? Both have to be negative, right? Because you have to get negative times negative to get positive 12. And -3 plus -4 gives you -7. Okay, so that has to be -3 and -4. All right, let's try a couple more here. Let's see what we have left. All right, so let's try E here. And E has a 3 in front now. Has a 3m squared. So this is kind of a problem because we cannot put what? M times m, right? Because m times n just gives us what? M squared. But this is not m squared, it's what? 3m squared, right? So we have a little problem, but that's okay. We know how to do this. What did we do last day? What did we do last day? Common factor, right? So what we're going to try to do first here is common factor. So does everything divide by 3? Yes, so that's nice. So let's common factor. So we're going to get 3 bracket. And what do we have if we take out a 3 from everything here? What are we going to get if we take out a 3 from everything? If we take out a 3 from here, what do we have left? M squared. If we take out a 3 from the 18, what do we get? We're going to get what? Remember, 18 is what? 3 times 6. So it's going to be, if I take out a 3, then 6 is left. So it's going to be minus 6m. 24 is what? What times, 3 times what gives me 24? 8, right? So this is going to be plus 8. Okay, now what we can do is try to get this trinomial into 2 brackets. So what we're going to do is take it one more step further, and I'm going to try to now make this trinomial into 2 brackets. Excuse me. All right. So now I can put what right here? What do the brackets start with?
M.
Yeah, M and M. Okay. Now I have to find pairs that multiply to what number? Pairs that multiply to what? The last number here. Okay, not 24, but what? 8 now we're looking at. We're looking at the 8 now. So what multiplies to 8? Start with what? 1n, 8, 2n, 4, and then that's it, right? 3 can't work. 4 we already have, so that's good. Weird. Now, which two numbers, which pair can add up to -6? Which pair looks like it can add up to -6? 2 and 4, right? As long as both of them are what? As long as both of them are negative. Okay, so we got -2 and -4. Again, it's always a good idea to check, right? -2 times -4 is what? +8. That's good. -2 plus -4 is -6, and that's also good. Alrighty, let's go to the next one. I think I'm gonna do 2 more questions, and then I'll let you do the practice work, because it's already 30-minute video. Alright, so here we go. Again, make 2 brackets. What do the 2 brackets have to start with? Yep, x and x in order to get what? X squared, right? Now, how about the last, what the 2 numbers have to multiply to what? 2 numbers have to multiply to what? Yeah, the 72, right? So 1 and what? 72, 2 and what? 30, 6, 3 and 3 and what? 24? Yeah. What else? Does 4 work? Oh man, there are too many that work. 4 and 18. 5? No. 6? Yes, 6 works too. So 6 and what? 6 and 12. 7? No. 8? Yes. 8 and 9? Okay. Oh man, that's too much work. Okay, so maybe a little tip here. I mean, look at the middle number. Yeah? The middle number is very what? Very small, right? So that means that the difference between the numbers have to be what? Very small. So 1 and 72 cannot possibly work, right? Yeah. So maybe we didn't need to list all the big difference ones, okay? But anyways, that one is the one that works. 8 and 9, right? Yeah. So in this case, what do we have then? It has to be 8 and 9. Which one's positive, which one's negative? The 8 has to be what? Negative. And then the 9 has to be positive, right? Because look, the middle number is positive, right? So that means I want more positives. Yes? So the bigger number has to be positive, right? Again, negative times positive gives you what? A negative, right? So that means that has to be negative and this has to be positive. Is this the final answer? Something looks wrong though, right? Why? Because, why? This one has a what? A y squared. Okay. How do we get y squared? Y times y. So you have to have 8y and 9y to get 72y squared. Does that make sense, everyone? Yes? Okay. All right, let me try 2 more questions at the bottom. So I'm going to jump to the bottom question here because they look a little bit different. So let's finish I and J here, and then that should be the end. All right, so here we go. So again, 2 brackets. And the brackets have to start with what? X and X, right? 2 numbers have to multiply to what? The 2 numbers have to multiply to what? What do the 2 numbers have to multiply to? 9, right? So what are the 2 numbers? Remember, this is C. This one right here is C. Okay. So 1 times 9 and 3 times 3. Yes? Now, where's the B value? Is there a B value here? No, right? The middle is B, which equals to what? 0. There is no B, so B equals to 0. All right, so that means which ones will add up to 0? Which ones could add up to 0? 3 and 3, yes? As long as what? One is negative and the other is positive. So one's negative and one's positive, then you get a 0 value for B. Is that okay? All right, let's try this last one. So again, if you look at this question right here, we need to, because we have a number in front of the x squared, what do we want to do first? Common factor. So everything divides by 4. Very good. Good. So we'll take out a 4 from everything. So if I take out a 4, then I get x squared. If I take out a 4 from 64, what do I get? 64 divided by 4 is 16. So that means I have negative 16y left. Negative 16y squared left. All right, so now we have 4. This equals 2. 4. And then my 2 brackets. Now I'm trying to make 2 brackets. So it's going to be what? The 2 brackets have to start with x and x. The 2 numbers have to multiply to what? 16, okay? Because this is actually the end part, not the middle part. Got it? So this is actually the C part. This is actually the C, not the B part. So 2 numbers have to multiply to 16. So here we go. 1 and 16, 2 and 8. Okay. And then what else? 4 and 4. So remember, there is no B here. So B equals to what? 0. So that means the 2 numbers have to add up to what? 0. Which ones will do that? The 4 and the 4, as long as one's negative and the other is positive. So negative 4 plus 4. Ooh, a lot of 4s there. Okay. All right, well, that's the end of the lesson. Hopefully you understood everything. Oh, yes, thank you. We forgot the y's. So don't forget the y's there. So y and y to get y squared. All right. Try your practice work now.